The most dangerous betrayal is not always committed by the person who attacks you. Sometimes, it comes from the person who stands nearby, watches everything happen, and decides that your suffering is more convenient than your survival. On a private cliff above the California coast, a woman's heel scraped against loose stone as her body hung over a drop of nearly 400 feet. Another woman lay flat against the ground, reaching down with both hands as gravel disappeared into the ocean below. And several yards behind them stood billionaire Nathaniel Cross. He could have stepped forward. He could have called for help. He could have saved a life. Instead, he remained in the shadows, studying the situation as though it were another business problem. Police sirens were already approaching the estate. By sunrise, Nathaniel would lose his wife, his mistress, his company, and the reputation he had spent 30 years building. But his downfall had begun days earlier, with an anniversary invitation his wife was never supposed to accept. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss one of our upcoming stories. Nathaniel Cross had built his public identity around control. At 58, he was the celebrated founder of Cross Meridian Resorts, a luxury hospitality empire valued at more than $12 billion. His company owned private island retreats in the Caribbean, historic hotels in Europe, mountain lodges in Colorado, and beachfront residences available only to clients whose names appeared on private lists. Business magazines praised Nathaniel as a visionary. Investors admired his discipline. Employees lowered their voices when he entered a room. His suits were made in London, his watches were purchased before they reached stores, and his Gulfstream carried him between boardrooms with his initials stitched into every leather seat. Yet the most important person in the creation of Cross Meridian was rarely mentioned in the articles. Her name was Evelyn Cross, and she had been married to Nathaniel for 31 years. Evelyn was 55, elegant without trying to be noticed, and far more intelligent than Nathaniel allowed the public to understand. When they met, Nathaniel had ambition, charm, and a failing roadside hotel inherited from his father. Evelyn had studied architecture, understood hospitality design, and possessed a modest inheritance from her grandmother. She invested almost every dollar into rebuilding that first property. She drew the original plans, negotiated with contractors, selected the furnishings, and slept beside Nathaniel in a storage room because they could not afford an apartment. Years later, when the hotel became profitable, Evelyn used her remaining inheritance to secure the land for their second resort. Nathaniel promised that they were building everything together. But as the company grew, her name slowly disappeared. Interviews referred to Nathaniel as the sole founder. Company histories reduced Evelyn to a supportive spouse. She accepted the insult because she believed their marriage still contained something more valuable than recognition. She did not yet understand that Nathaniel had mistaken her patience for weakness. 6 years before the cliffside anniversary, Celeste Rowan entered Nathaniel's world. She was 37, confident, polished, and gifted at convincing wealthy people that they deserved whatever they desired. As vice president of brand strategy, she helped reposition Cross Meridian as an invitation-only symbol of status. Revenue increased, celebrities arrived, and Nathaniel began taking Celeste to meetings Evelyn had once attended. Their affair began during the opening of a resort in Monaco. At first, Nathaniel described it to himself as an escape from responsibility. Celeste viewed it differently. She believed she was becoming the next Mrs. Cross. Nathaniel gave her a penthouse, expensive jewelry, and promises that always seemed to depend on the completion of one more deal. The largest of those deals was a merger with an international hotel group that would increase Nathaniel's personal wealth by several $1 billion. He told Celeste that after the merger, he would finally leave Evelyn. What he never told her was that Evelyn still controlled the voting rights that made the deal possible. 3 days before Nathaniel and Evelyn's 31st anniversary, an ivory envelope arrived at Evelyn's home. It contained an invitation to a private weekend celebration at Airy House, Nathaniel's glass and stone estate above the Pacific. Evelyn had not planned to attend. Nathaniel had told her the weekend was reserved for merger discussions and that their anniversary dinner would be postponed. But beneath the printed invitation was a handwritten message. It told her to come alone because there was something about her husband she deserved to know. Evelyn recognized neither the handwriting nor the stationery. She could have confronted Nathaniel immediately. Instead, she drove to Cross Meridian's headquarters late that evening, using an entrance few employees remembered she was authorized to access. Outside Nathaniel's private office, she heard Celeste demanding that he announce their relationship after the merger. Nathaniel replied that Evelyn could not be removed until her voting rights were transferred. Then Celeste suggested having Evelyn declared emotionally incapable of managing her financial interests. Nathaniel did not refuse. He simply told her to wait until after the anniversary weekend. When they left, Evelyn entered the office. Inside Nathaniel's locked cabinet, she found a version of her future prepared without her knowledge. There was a forged medical evaluation claiming that she suffered from confusion and severe emotional instability. There was a power of attorney document bearing a copied version of her signature. There were draft divorce papers offering her a fraction of what she legally owned. And there were transfers totaling nearly $80 million from Cross Meridian accounts into offshore companies linked to Celeste. Evelyn stood in the room where Nathaniel had once promised never to make a decision without her, holding proof that he intended to erase her from both their marriage and their company. She felt anger, but beneath it was something heavier. For 31 years, she had defended Nathaniel's character whenever others questioned him. Now she understood that she had not been protecting her husband from unfair judgment. She had been protecting herself from the truth. Yet she returned every document to its original place and left without making a sound. Erie House stood on a narrow stretch of land where the cliffs dropped sharply into the Pacific. Nathaniel had designed the anniversary weekend to impress the merger partners. Black cars arrived throughout the afternoon carrying investors, executives, politicians, celebrities, and members of families whose fortunes were older than the state itself. Evelyn entered wearing a simple navy gown and the thin gold wedding band she had never removed. Nathaniel's surprise lasted less than a second before he covered it with a smile. Celeste did not bother hiding her disappointment. At dinner, Evelyn discovered Celeste seated beside Nathaniel in the place traditionally reserved for his wife. Around Celeste's neck was a diamond necklace Nathaniel had given Evelyn on their 20th anniversary, a piece he later claimed had been misplaced during a move. Celeste spoke throughout the evening about women who built careers instead of merely marrying successful men. She praised independence while wearing another woman's diamonds. Nathaniel allowed every insult. He did not realize Evelyn had already invited someone else to the estate. Near the end of dinner, Evelyn mentioned the original Cross Meridian founder agreement. Her tone was casual, but Nathaniel's hand tightened around his glass. She reminded the table that the agreement contained a protection clause. Any executive involved in fraud, coercion, or an attempt to steal another founder's voting rights could be removed immediately. Celeste's expression changed. Nathaniel asked why Evelyn had suddenly become interested in old legal documents. She smiled and said anniversaries had a way of making people remember where things began. Later that night, Celeste entered Evelyn's bedroom while Evelyn was downstairs. She searched drawers, opened luggage, and found a folder marked Cross Meridian transfers. But every page inside was blank. Evelyn had left it there deliberately. From the hallway, she watched Celeste leave the room carrying fear she had not possessed before. At almost the same moment, Nathaniel received an anonymous message informing him that $80 million was missing from company accounts. The evidence appeared to point directly at Celeste. Nathaniel's loyalty to Celeste disappeared the moment she became a possible threat to him. He began calculating how quickly he could separate himself from the missing money. He had approved the transfers, but the companies receiving them were registered through intermediaries connected to Celeste. If investigators began asking questions, he could claim she had stolen his passwords. He could portray himself as a betrayed CEO and an embarrassed husband manipulated by two unstable women. Celeste noticed his sudden distance. She had spent 6 years believing Nathaniel would choose her once the timing was right. Now, with the merger approaching, she recognized that she was not his future. She was his escape route. That night, she approached Evelyn and asked her to take a private sunrise walk along the cliff. She claimed she wanted to tell the truth about the affair before Nathaniel destroyed them both. Evelyn agreed. Before leaving her room the next morning, she activated an emergency broadcast function on her watch. Nathaniel overheard where the women were going. He followed them without revealing himself. The path behind Airy House curved between stone walls and windswept cypress trees before narrowing near a secluded overlook. Celeste began with an apology that sounded rehearsed. She said Nathaniel had promised the marriage was already over. She claimed he described Evelyn as cold, dependent, and unwilling to accept reality. Evelyn listened until Celeste finished. Then she revealed that she knew about the forged medical report, the power of attorney documents, and the offshore transfers. Celeste's confidence collapsed. She insisted that Nathaniel had authorized every transaction. According to her, the $80 million was supposed to become Nathaniel's private reserve after the merger. He planned to divorce Evelyn, blame Celeste for the missing funds, and keep the hidden fortune once both women had been discredited. Evelyn realized the full scale of his design. Nathaniel had not simply betrayed his wife with his mistress. He had built a plan in which each woman could be blamed for the destruction of the other. And from behind a stone wall, Nathaniel heard Celeste expose everything. He could have stepped forward then. He could have admitted the truth and prevented what followed. Instead, Nathaniel remained concealed because revealing himself would confirm that he had heard the accusations and understood the danger. Evelyn told Celeste that copies of the evidence had already been delivered to independent members of the Cross Meridian board. Celeste stared toward the ocean and asked what future Evelyn had left her. Evelyn answered that the future had been damaged by choices Celeste made long before that morning. She turned to leave, but Celeste blocked the path. The wind grew stronger, pressing their clothes against them as loose grit moved across the stone. Celeste admitted that she had sent the anonymous invitation. She expected Evelyn to confront Nathaniel publicly, destroy the merger, and leave the marriage. Instead, Evelyn had remained calm. That composure frightened Celeste more than anger would have. She realized Evelyn was no longer trying to save Nathaniel. She was gathering enough proof to remove him. Celeste told Evelyn that Nathaniel had called her weak. Evelyn replied that he had described Celeste in almost identical terms. To his wife, Celeste was ambitious but replaceable. To his mistress, Evelyn was helpless but inconvenient. He maintained control by convincing each woman that the other was the true obstacle. For one brief moment, Celeste seemed to understand. Then she noticed a small light on Evelyn's watch. She reached for Evelyn's wrist, demanding to know who was listening. Evelyn pulled back. Celeste stepped closer. Nathaniel could see everything from his hiding place. He removed his phone from his pocket, but he did not call security. His mind returned to the founder agreement, the missing money, and the evidence Celeste could provide. Evelyn's death might transfer her voting rights through the estate. Celeste's arrest might place the financial crimes entirely on her. If both women disappeared from his life at once, he might still save himself. That calculation lasted only seconds, but it revealed more about Nathaniel than 30 years of public speeches ever had. Celeste lunged toward Evelyn, intending to force her backward over the edge. Evelyn turned at the last instant. Celeste's momentum carried her past. Her heel struck loose gravel, her body twisted, and she vanished over the cliff. But she did not fall into the ocean. Her hands caught a narrow shelf several feet below the overlook. Evelyn dropped immediately, pressing her body against the ground and reaching toward the woman who had just tried to kill her. Celeste's fingers were slipping. Stones broke away beneath her shoes. Then Nathaniel stepped from behind the wall. Evelyn shouted for him to help. He remained several yards away. Celeste begged him to take Evelyn's arm or call security. Nathaniel warned Evelyn that the ledge was unstable. He told her she might be pulled over if she continued. What he did not do was move closer. Evelyn looked into her husband's face and understood that he was prepared to watch Celeste die. Nathaniel believed Celeste's death would solve the financial problem and make Evelyn's claims harder to prove. He told Evelyn to let go before she endangered herself. But Evelyn had spent years watching him confuse caution with cowardice and control with strength. She wrapped one arm around a steel emergency cable fixed near the path and extended the other toward Celeste. She could not lift her alone, but she kept Celeste from falling. The woman hanging below her had stolen her necklace, shared her husband's bed, helped forge documents, and attempted to push her from a cliff. Evelyn still refused to release her. Security officers arrived minutes later, followed by paramedics and sheriff's deputies. They pulled Celeste to safety with serious injuries but no loss of life. As officers surrounded Nathaniel, Evelyn stood and brushed the dirt from her hands. She told him he should have called for help before they heard everything. Nathaniel glanced at her watch. Only then did he understand. The watch had transmitted the entire confrontation to Martin Shaw, the Cross family's longtime attorney, 2 independent directors, and the estate security office. They had heard Celeste confess to the forged documents and offshore transfers. They had heard her describe Nathaniel's plan. They had heard the struggle, Evelyn's call for assistance, and Nathaniel's warning that she should let Celeste fall. Martin arrived carrying a signed board resolution. Hours before dinner, Evelyn had activated the Founder Protection Clause. Nathaniel had already been suspended as CEO pending an investigation. The message about the missing $80 million had come from Evelyn, not an unknown whistleblower. She wanted to see what Nathaniel would do once he believed Celeste could expose him. His decision to follow them instead of contacting security gave her the answer. Evelyn had not come to Airy House to rescue her marriage. She had come to learn whether her husband was merely unfaithful or capable of sacrificing human lives to protect himself. Celeste was taken into custody after leaving the hospital. Faced with charges for attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, and forgery, she agreed to cooperate. She surrendered her phones, private recordings, account records, and years of messages from Nathaniel. The evidence showed that he had approved the transfers and intended to blame her after the merger. Nathaniel was removed permanently from Cross Meridian. His accounts were frozen, the merger collapsed, and federal investigators began examining other transactions hidden across his companies. The business world that had once celebrated his discipline now studied his deception. Yet the revelation that wounded him most was the truth about Evelyn. Old contracts, design records, and financial statements proved that she was not simply the billionaire's wife. She was a co-founder whose money, intelligence, and work had made Cross Meridian possible. The empire Nathaniel treated as proof of his greatness was also proof of the woman he had tried to erase. Evelyn took temporary control of the company, but she refused to destroy it for revenge. Thousands of housekeepers, chefs, managers, drivers, gardeners, and maintenance workers depended on Cross Meridian for their livelihoods. She removed the executives who had enabled Nathaniel, restored money taken from employee retirement accounts, and created an independent ethics board with authority that no chief executive could override. She filed for divorce and reclaimed the voting shares Nathaniel attempted to steal. Nathaniel requested a private meeting, then sent letters through lawyers, mutual friends, and former board members. Evelyn answered none of them. For a man who had spent his life buying access to every room, her silence became the one locked door he could not open. Celeste later wrote to Evelyn from prison. She admitted that Evelyn had saved her life when both Celeste and Nathaniel had been willing to destroy hers. She did not ask for forgiveness. She only acknowledged the truth. 1 year later, Evelyn returned to Airy House. The overlook had been secured, and the property no longer served as a private playground for powerful guests. Evelyn converted it into a leadership and recovery center for women rebuilding their lives after financial control, workplace retaliation, and emotional abuse. She kept Celeste's letter in a drawer, not as an excuse for what had happened, but as proof that mercy does not require the abandonment of justice. Nathaniel had believed power meant never having to choose between the people he betrayed. But on the edge of that cliff, his refusal to choose revealed exactly who he was. Celeste lost her balance for only a few seconds. Nathaniel lost his marriage, his company, his fortune, and the respect of everyone who once trusted him. Evelyn lost the illusion of the man she had loved. In return, she reclaimed her name, her legacy, and the courage she had spent years hiding to protect his pride. In the end, wealth did not decide who survived that morning. Status did not make Nathaniel brave, and betrayal did not make Evelyn cruel. The woman with every reason to let go was the only person willing to hold on. That was the justice Nathaniel never expected. He had built an empire by convincing the world that strength meant control. Evelyn proved that real strength can look very different. Sometimes, it is the ability to walk away without destroying what innocent people depend on. Sometimes, it is choosing accountability without surrendering compassion. And sometimes, it is reaching over the edge to save a person who would never have done the same for you, or not because they deserve freedom from consequences, but because their wrongdoing will not be allowed to decide your character. Nathaniel Cross lost everything on that cliff. Evelyn Cross finally discovered that she had never needed his permission to become the most powerful person in the story. But what would you have done if you were in Evelyn's position? Would you have reached down to save Celeste after she tried to push you over the cliff, or would you have stepped back and allowed justice to take its own course? Share your honest answer in the comments, because your decision may reveal more about forgiveness, justice, and character than you realize. And tell us whether you believe Nathaniel's greatest punishment was losing his fortune, losing his freedom, or losing the one woman who truly helped build his empire. If Evelyn's story moved you, give this video a like and share it with someone who believes betrayal should never have the final word. Subscribe to Luxury Justice Stories and turn on notifications, because another powerful story of wealth, betrayal, hidden truth, and emotional justice is coming soon. Until then, remember this: money can buy loyalty for a season, but it can never purchase genuine character.